The story takes place in a modern setting, but there are dungeons, monsters, and skills in this world. Our protagonist Ju Dong-hoon possesses a rare skill of necromancy, but there's a catch. He can only summon E-rank skeletons. One day he unlocks a hidden achievement that lets him level up his skeletons. This is the story of leveling up from the lowest to possibly the highest. Between the battle between humans and goblins, the humans are far less in number, but their leader still keeps giving orders, while our protagonist watches the whole scene from under his hood. When there is no other option left, the human leader asks our protagonist, the Necromancer, for help. Our protagonist is more than happy to help as he is here as a mercenary. The skull staff in his hand glows purple as he summons his skeletons. Now it has become a battle between the skeleton and the goblins. The other men are surprised to see a necromancer in an E-rank dungeon because the necromancy has been the strongest authority lately. Now they know their leader was so relaxed because he recruited some strong necromancer. Our necromancer, listening to all these praises, has quite a dead expression. Among the 7.9 billion people, only around 1,000 people have the unique authority of necromancer. However, all the summons of our necromancer are E-ranked, so one could say he is just an irregular necromancer. The others are jealous that he is only using E-ranked skeletons because he is sure of his skills. But the truth is, our protagonist, Ju Dong-hoon, is a cursed E-ranked necromancer. He is the one who controls the souls of the dead, a necromancer, and can overpower enemies using frightening spirits and poisons. But he has been cursed only to summon skeletons. Around 10 years ago, humans began to receive unique abilities when they turned adults at 20. The contents of the unique authorities were completely random, from basics such as blacksmithing and sewing to auxiliary authorities such as exploration, healing, or buffing. Since these abilities were all just given based on luck, not everyone felt great about it. Still, thanks to these abilities, the humans were able to survive the monster invasion. Our protagonist became a necromancer that everyone was envious of, but his growth was stunned and he could only summon E-rank skeletons, so he became an E-rank dungeon hypercarry. Ju Dong-hoon reports back to the team leader about completing the dungeon party mercenary job and takes his leave. As he walks outside, Ju Dong-hoon sighs at his luck. He at least wants his skill to be so trash that people do not have any expectations from him. He has been given hope for nothing, and wishes to have a production-type ability, because even after becoming a necromancer, his pay for today is only 40,000 won. Even a part-time job would pay him more at this rate, but since this is the only thing he actually wants to do, he can't give up on it either. To make his day even worse, nature decides to let him hear the news of the Dark Lord becoming an A-ranker in just 3 years of being active. It is also the first time that a hunter has become an A-ranker in just 3 years, which shows how powerful necromancers can be. At first, Ju Dong-hoon is surprised to hear that, but this is the thing that has been driving him mad. Dark Lord is someone who received his authority the same day as our protagonist, but one of them is a cursed necromancer, while the other is already an A-ranker. Ju Dong-hoon fumes at such an absurd possibility. Ju Dong-hoon finds himself walking to a secluded place, thinking about the reality of things, but that does not mean he can resent reality, and it's still without trying. So he summons his ordinary skeletons with the notification that he can summon up to 10 skeletons at once. But the surprising part is that he can name each skeleton. At first he thought it was something rare, but he was just a Lulu. Leaving the sad life behind, Ju Dong-hoon starts training his skeletons. He always gets the same skeletons whenever he summons them, so he comes up with the most creative names with their weapons. Yeah, a huge sword for Bony 1, a long spear for Bony 2, and a bow for Bony 3. He orders them to train, because this is his way of putting in effort. At first he saw some results as his skeletons were able to handle 3 goblins at once. But that was all. No matter how much harsher their training became, the skeletons did not become any stronger than that. Ju Dong-hoon once again sighs at his sad life and continues whining, oblivious that there's something approaching from behind. A low grunt causes him to look behind. He is terrified to find an orc approaching him. Ju Dong-hoon quickly backs away while the skeletons are suppressed by the presence of a strong being, causing all stats to reduce by 20%, so their master calls them useless. The fact that an orc is here means that there is a dungeon break nearby, which is a phenomenon where a dungeon that has not been cleared enough breaks to let the monsters outside. The orc raises its weapon to attack, so Ju Dong-hoon orders his skeletons to block the attack. The orc grunts and easily pushes the skeletons away, making the skeletons unsummoned. It then chases after Ju Dong-hoon, but thankfully, an arrow hits the orc. Dong-hoon really wants Bony 3 to do something because even with this shitty life he still wants to live. Moreover, Dong-hoon has 70 energy left, meaning he can summon 7 more boneheads, so he summons his bonies and orders them to fight in a formation. Still, the orc is very powerful for the E-rank skeletons, so Dong-hoon keeps summoning the skeletons to save his life. This causes him to utilize all his energy, but the orc is still standing without a scratch. He only has 3 skeletons against the orc, making him think this is the end. Suddenly, he receives a golden message, but Dong-hoon is in no position to check it right now. Still, he checks the message on instinct, to find that he has a hidden achievement of the 10,000 use rule that promotes him to D-rank necromancer. Dong-hoon returns to the fight at hand as his energy has been refilled and the skeletons promoted to D rank. The skeletons can now fight the orc and that gets Dong-hoon excited, so he summons more skeletons that have new weapons now. With the addition of a tank and a mage, the party is now somewhat rounded, so they all fight against the orc, making it drop its weapon. Next, the mage summons a massive fireball to end the orc. The skeletons look at their master after defeating the strong orc, but Dong-hoon is stunned right now. As the feeling settles in, he feels like the world does not want him dead just yet. Dong-hoon eats ramen and looks at the status screen. He never expected his abilities to grow, but now he is quite sure that efforts are rewarded. He does not know when he will reach C rank, but he is happy with what he got for now, and needs to go back to the basics. The power of an intermediate skeleton was impressive enough, which makes him wonder about the prospect of getting even stronger. He wonders if Bony 5 will be able to spam a blizzard storm, while Bony 1 and Bony 2 will become swordmaster and spearmaster. He is so ready for it. Dong-hoon arrives at work to find something wrong with the atmosphere. Moreover, he notices someone with a green badge, implying a C rank, a high-rank hunter. The leader calls Dong-hoon to tell him about some big news. The leader talks about the pairing guild established by Gi Parang. Everyone in Korea knows about the prestigious guild established by the Korean ranker Gi Parang, the fine bow. The leader informs that the guild is going to explore a newly opened dungeon and needs porters. The pay is 10 times the posted amount and are even accepting E-rankers. The leader asks if Dong-hoon is interested, but Dong-hoon decides to take a look at the dungeon first. The leader explains that it is a newly discovered one near Paju and is quite tough. 5 teams have already failed to clear it, and its rank is undetermined. But the teams that tried to clear it were all amateurs, and with the famous Parang going in, it would not be that difficult. Moreover, Dong-hoon will just be a porter, so he does not even have to fight. So the leader suggests working his part to get money. Dong-hoon thinks about what to do because the 10-fold reward is probably hazard pay for the dungeon. He is mentally exhausted from that orc encounter yesterday, but the offer is quite tempting. Even the Dark Lord talked about going to dungeons above one's ranks to level up faster in his interview. So Dong-hoon decides to join, and since the expedition is 1 week from now on, he decides to take the week off. The leader agrees and even offers to treat him to a meal soon. Later, Dong-hoon summons his skeletons, feeling proud that his training really paid off and the skeletons will keep growing stronger, and if they keep up, he will be able to become an A ranker as well. He starts the training once again to see what D-rank skeletons can do, and the results are more than satisfactory. Dong-hoon is stunned because the power is almost equal to a C rank. He knew they got stronger but never thought to this extent. First of all, he needs to change his training gear because the wooden scarecrows are useless now, and for that he needs to spend more money. The skeletons are stronger now, but the real problem is Dong-hoon himself. What if a powerful opponent gets near him instead of the skeletons? It would not matter how strong the skeletons are because it will all be over then and there. He notices the mage skeleton approaching, who points its staff at Dong-hoon and casts a spell. Seems like the skeleton can read his mind and even nods his head to confirm it. Dong-hoon is shocked at the discovery because the skeleton only used to follow his orders, but now they can express their opinion. The tank skeleton approaches from behind, and when he has his master's attention, it points towards the training gear. Obviously, Dong-hoon has no idea what it is trying to imply. The shield skeleton starts fighting the other skeletons, proving his shield to be stronger than all. If the Bone Knight helps with the training, Dong-hoon would not need to buy any extra equipment. He asks Bony 2 to attack him to test the air shield around him. The skeleton does as he is told, and attacks Dong-hoon, who remains unharmed, even after the impact. Dong-hoon is satisfied with the results, so he tells them to continue their training. The training seems to be going well as Dong-hoon receives the notification that the skeleton's strength is increasing. But the shocking thing is that the status window has been unlocked due to the first growth after the awakening. Now Dong-hoon can see the status window for each bonehead individually. He finds that because of the training, Bony 1, Bony 2, and Bony 3 have different stats than the others, so all his efforts so far have not been in vain. Dong-hoon thinks he just needs to raise them comprehensively to make them the world's strongest skeletons. At the station, Dong-hoon carries his bag, in which he brought a sleeping bag and emergency food, since his position here is to be a porter here. Dong-hoon heads to the crowd where the participating mercenaries are ordered to wait in front of the dungeon they are going to enter. The dungeon is quite close to Paju Station, so a dim energy can be seen at a radius of 200 meters. From the looks of it, it looks like an average dungeon has been generated naturally, but adventurers still get nervous looking at it since it is a high difficulty dungeon. They also know that the thicker the color that's around the hole, the higher the chance of the dungeon being complex. However, they feel relieved to have Parang with them. However, Dong-hoon thinks it is nonsense to believe that they will be safe just because they are with a big guild. There are a lot of dungeons in this world, and countless hunters have gone missing in them, but who cares about the sacrifices and deaths that get overshadowed by the luxurious spotlight of the rankers? But still, Dong-hoon is going to put his life on the line and risk it all. Someone from behind calls for him, but when he turns around, there's no one there. However, he still hears someone talk about his D rank, even when he has an E rank plate. Dong-hoon looks around, but when he finds absolutely no one, he asks her out. However, the girl demands him to answer first, as it questions the reason he hid his ability from Parang to participate as a porter. Donghoon thinks the person has misunderstood something because Parang is full of A-rank hunters, so being a D or E does not make a difference. The girl says his expression is making him even more sus and suspects that he is a spy who takes acting classes. The girl finally emerges as she says he has taken Parang's intelligence capability too lightly. Donghoon is surprised to see her with a golden plate that is only given to C ranks or higher. Just with that, Donghoon can tell that she is the first rank among South Korea's 37 rankers, the Dark Empress, Gi Soyul, and Gi Parang's only little sister. Donghoon trembles because thanks to her assassination unique ability, she is the #1 person one should not make angry. Leaving aside the scary part, Donghoon cannot believe he got a chance to talk to the ranker he admires. He tries to explain that she misunderstood something because he is just a D rank, and if someone is competing with Parang, they should also be a big one who would never use someone like him. Soyul lets out an intimidating aura before laughing and apologizing because turns out she is kidding. Donghoon did not expect this turn of events. Donghoon can't understand her at all. Why would someone of her class pull a prank on a nobody? Donghoon wonders if she did a background check on him because training the skeletons like crazy might get the attention of rankers, but it is a God-given opportunity for a ranker to show attention. Soyul smiles brightly as she asks if he got flustered because of what she did, so suddenly and apologizes for being rude. She admits she thought it was interesting that a porter with an E-rank badge would have the skills to house 5 D-rank energies inside them. Donghoon has nothing to say about the matter because she is right, but then he notices that she grasped his strength using energy detection. Soyul admits that her older brother asked her to join the second team's expedition as the scout, so she was looking for a porter and then there just happens to be a sus porter right here. She asks Donghoon if he wants to volunteer in scouting since he is the most capable among the porters and seems like he would not get scared and run away. Donghoon sweats at that, but Soyul claims to have an eye for people and promises to double the reward. Now that's an offer no one can refuse, and our broke protagonist is no exception. Dungeon's rank depending on the difficulty starts from E all the way to S. This rank is not set by the system, so humanity had to subjectively rank and quantify it. Even the S ranker White Shadow says there is no way to know a dungeon's rank but to go inside and check it yourself. There is a tip to check the brightness of the color that surrounds the dungeon. The darker it is, the more likely it is to be a higher level dungeon. But even this method was not accurate, so the association had to set up a standard that if the dungeon cannot be cleared even with 5 or more hunters of the same rank, increase the rank of the dungeon. If 5 or more A-ranked hunters participated, but the dungeon could not be cleared, then the corresponding dungeon becomes designated as an S rank. It was a method that inevitably required someone's sacrifice, and the unranked dungeon our protagonist is about to enter is something like that. But they could not just send their main forces in, so they sent the scouting team first. Thanks to that, Donghoon could smell the dungeon's air much faster than the other mercenaries. As he entered, the first thing he noted was the cave and the luminescent pearls that solved the vision problem. However, one suggests taking the pearls to sell them at a decent price, but thankfully another person warned him not to touch anything recklessly. Everyone on the team is relaxed because the whole team got an A-rank badge except Soyul, who is an S-ranker. Soyul tells them to prepare themselves as she orders them to look around while the guide Kang Sunwook has to look for an exit while covering for the porter. Sunwook is confident in his skills because of his alias Guide, which is a name given by the system for being exceptionally good at finding the way on dungeons. Soyul leaves with the rest, so Sunwook asks Donghoon if he is nervous. When Donghoon affirms, Sunwook tells him to keep being nervous because this dungeon has more than 1 or 2 suspicious things about it. When even the Dark Empress is telling them to be on alert, the dungeon is excessively quiet, and the structure is simple, so there is a high chance that there would not be monsters. If something lived in this small cave, there should be a slight ringing, sound, or vibrations. Sunwook concludes all these things indicate there might be some hidden gimmick, leaving Donghoon impressed. Sunwook boasts that he has been in the dungeon business for many years, and points to look for an exit for now. Donghoon notes that it is the opposite direction from the other hunters, but since he thinks it would be fine, he starts following Sunwook. Sunwook says he is anxious because there are no traps or hints so far, and his body feels heavy. Donghoon also has the chills, so he asks if he is sure they should continue going forward. Sunwook is also not sure because this is the first time he has felt this way. Even meeting a ranker did not make him feel like this. It feels like there might be some sort of ridiculous being here, so Sunwook asks Donghoon to summon something, since he is a necromancer, so that he would be able to save himself at least if the situation comes down to it. Donghoon summons 5 skeletons, consuming half his energy, but Sunwook does not seem impressed. He notices something and instantly feels a heavy presence which shocks Donghoon, but he still tells him to keep walking towards an open area ahead because he feels the presence of several beings. It could be a previous team or monster, but they would not know until they reach it. They start moving forward until so much pressure that Donghoon can't even keep his eyes open. The mage skeleton notices his trembling legs, so he summons air shield around Donghoon, but the shield shatters, making him cough blood. Donghoon scolds the skeleton because the pressure is enough to shatter a skill the moment it is cast. Thankfully the skeletons support him, but Sunwook is already far ahead. Donghoon cannot believe that a newly appeared dungeon in Paju turns out to be a super high difficulty dungeon that makes even an A ranker tense. Donghoon wants to live because becoming a ranker comes after he survives. He somehow keeps moving forward until he receives a notification that he has reached the stage named An Elderly Man with White Hair Filled with Deep Resentment. Donghoon is bewildered by the notification because who wouldn't? The system also provides that his resentment is so deep that icy frost forms in his hair, so he needs to be defeated after entering the room. Donghoon concludes that the white-haired elderly man must be the boss of this dungeon. His attention is diverted by a group of men who seem relieved to see them and ask if they are the reinforcement troops. Donghoon wonders if they are the hunters who tried to avoid the pressure and reach this place. The men notice Sunwook's purple badge, which indicates an A-rank hunter, and the skeletons of a necromancer, so they ask for help. Sunwook decides to distribute the emergency food. Donghoon is slightly upset at seeing him run away on his own, but that's how dungeons work. Donghoon hands over water and food that the men readily take, but he knows he could end up like them if he makes one wrong move. Sunwook tells them to eat slowly and probes for info. One man decides to speak on behalf of his team and says that he is a B-rank hunter, the highest rank among the survivors. He describes this place as hell because he has been hunting for quite something but never encountered such a strange dungeon. He tells them there is no exit, and no matter which way you go, the cave brings you to this same door. They were unable to leave after being bound by the aura, so all they could do was challenge what was beyond this door. But the clear condition is insane, because no one can beat the elderly man filled with resentment. No matter which rank, they are all infants before the old man, but the B ranker is sure the results will be different with an A ranker hunter and is optimistic about getting out of here. However, Donghoon asks the reason for their survival if the boss is as strong as they say. The hunter informs him that the old man does not destroy people, he simply accepts challengers and conducts some sort of test. They do not know the details, but the old man just subdued them painfully and clicked his tongue saying this one's not fit, and threw them outside. Donghoon finds it confusing, but the B ranker is even more confused because the old man is a human and this is the first time a dungeon boss has been a human since the world changed. Donghoon is shocked, thinking if such a thing is even possible. Whatever the case, they must open the door and complete the mission to find an exit. However, he can't trust Sunwook since he is a hunter specialized in guiding. He is thinking about it when Soil and the other arrive at the scene. After gauging the situation, Soil decides to head in right away since the survivors are not doppelgangers or traps. Moreover, it is bothering her that the aura is so intense, but they can't just sit around. The survivors celebrate the presence of the A-rankers from the pairing guild, but Soil orders them and Donghoon to stay here while the hunters decide to take care of the boss. Donghoon knows that an S-rank stands in a completely different realm from an A-rank, and to top it off, Soil is ranked within the top 1,000 A-rankers. She orders the others to prepare themselves, as she opens the door and heads inside. Donghoon patiently waits until the hunters come outside, crashing, including the S-rank Soil. Donghoon is shocked to see that since it has not even been 10 minutes since they went in, even the S-rank Soil is incapacitated quickly, but she is furious at being declared a non-fit, so she asks Donghoon to hand over an advanced level potion from his bag because she is going back inside. Donghoon can't comprehend why she wants to go back after getting beaten up like that, so he asks if she is really sure. Soil says that the old man only subdues the opponents painfully, and she is determined to show him if she is truly fit or not. Donghoon notes that fit is a term usually used when a master is seeking a disciple, so the old man's resentment could be from not finding suitable talents. Soil drinks the potion and heads back inside, and so, Soil's infinite challenge begins, the result being the same every time. She is infuriated at the old man because he really is talented in all arts, but she is not giving up anytime soon. So a day passes by and then the second, third, and fourth day, but she does not stop challenging, even more infuriated. Now, despite her battered condition, Donghoon thinks even if Ji Parang himself comes to rescue her, the problem would ensue because he has a feeling that even 5 rankers might not be able to defeat the old man. Soil admits that the old man is strong, but she is determined to keep challenging until she has a breath left. Donghoon is impressed by a ranker's mindset, but everyone is frustrated right now, so he cannot just wait here doing nothing. He belatedly notes that all the hunters here have gone through the door and come back except him, so he approaches Soil to tell her that he wants to go inside as well. She is taken aback at the suggestion because a porter wants to enter a dungeon that even a ranker failed. The hunter with red hair tells him to know his place and carry things like a porter. He is even ready to take out his sword, but Soil stops him and asks Donghoon if he wants to go inside because he does not trust her. Donghoon explains it is not like that. She reminds him that he is a porter according to the contract, so he cannot voice his opinions in dungeon exploration, and asks why he wants to challenge it. Donghoon explains that the old man is looking for someone fit, and he figured that the old man's resentment might be related to finding a worthy disciple, and a worthy disciple means potential that does not necessarily need to be perfect. There is a chance that the old man is not talking about their current skill level, Soil asks if he plans to make the old man his master rather than defeat him, so Donghoon suggests that may be the hidden clear condition, since dungeons have alternative ways to clear them sometimes. Soil ponders some more and asks if he thinks he has more potential than her. Donghoon realizes that things are getting heated, so he tells them he highly doubts that will be the case, but Soil is still on him, saying that he did not deny the possibility entirely. Donghoon once again explains that everyone here has experienced pain except him, so he feels like the odd one out here. Thankfully, Soil smiles at that and says he is showing his true colors now. She claims to know from the start that he is suspicious because he has the eyes of a wolf on the prowl. She asks if he is after the dungeon's reward or hoping for some fortuitous encounter during the raid. Donghoon really thinks that Soil should be a fortune teller, not a ranker, because of her ability to read others by just looking. Soil gives him permission to try out since there is no other solution, and she needs a break. Donghoon is surprised at the opportunity, but she tells him he only gets one chance, since the emergency rations are running out. Donghoon thanks her, heads towards the door, and starts the mission with multiple notification screens popping up in front of him. After encountering a bright light, he finds himself in a dark room, the aura so intense that he can't even stand. The old man comments that the man before him is not even worth looking at, and decides to get rid of Donghoon. The old man opens his eyes, causing Donghoon to feel even more pressure, but he gets a notice that he is facing the memory of a cursed soul, a hidden condition for cursed necromancers. Donghoon can't believe that he just unlocked an S-rank skill of memory recreation, and even more that he is currently using the skill on the old man. The system tells him that it is recreating the memory of the cursed soul, master of all techniques, so he will be transported shortly. The white light flashes again, and Donghoon finds himself in a snowy terrain with the master, who is lamenting at the fact that there are no suitable candidates. The old man thinks this is a meaningless life since he worked hard to only throw it all away. Donghoon looks around wondering if it is another world, but the old man's emotions and memories hit him. The old man continues talking to himself that once one knows how to master the flow of ki, all techniques become one. The old man who transcended any and all life for a very long time. However, even ki could not stop him from aging. Now drinking cold water feels like swallowing poison, so it is agonizing and he is thirsty. But the old man is determined to not die like this because dying at this point would be unfair. The old man just wants to find one disciple to pass down his ability, but there is no one with enough talent. He cannot go on life this, so he sells his soul just to leave behind his complete self. The skill ends, so Donghoon feels a gust of wind before he is teleported back to the dark room. He looks around, but the pressures come back as the master of all techniques stares at him. He feels suffocated, but there is also hope now. The old man can tell that Donghoon peered into his soul and gets curious about him. Donghoon admits doing so because he is determined to inherit his vast power and knowledge. However, the old man thinks he has nothing other than being somewhat interesting and increases the pressure on Donghoon. But Donghoon says he will never find a disciple at this rate, and people will remember him as a stubborn ghost filled with obstinacy. The old man feels offended by the comment and decides to break his leg to teach him a lesson. Donghoon asks him to wait as he explains that he has mastered every technique when the people of this world struggle to master even one in their lifetime. The old man thinks there must be another genius like him, but Donghoon tells him that the woman who came before him is the strongest in this world. Donghoon internally feels a sting at the old man's reaction because a ranker like Ji Soil was his ultimate goal, but the old man takes the bait as he can't believe that she is one of the strongest and thinks that he is being tricked. Donghoon tells him to look into his eyes to find out for himself if he is lying or not. The old man can tell that he is telling the truth, but the truth is unfortunate, so Donghoon offers himself since no one meets the standard. He asks the old man to pass his abilities to him, but the old man thinks he is being shameless and wants to teach him a lesson. Donghoon explains that he is not asking him to teach him directly, as he looks at the status screen and summons his skeletons. He says that the old man can surely see their potential, so the old man ponders. Donghoon thinks that growing skeletons have limitless potential, and with such potential, all of them have different unique abilities. He explains to the old man that it will be easier to teach them, and since he wants a single heir, he does not need to worry because he will be the one to inherit it all. Donghoon continues to pitch that the skeletons do not feel pain, so they have more endurance than anyone. The old man scrutinizes them before turning away, making Donghoon fear for the worst. Fortunately, the old man finds it amusing and ironic that the successor he was looking for was not a human but an undead. The old man comments that the skeletons must have been exceptional warriors in life, and he has always wanted such disciples. Teaching more than one is a bit tricky, but the old man decides to compromise. Thus, Donghoon fulfills the hidden condition. The old man asks Donghoon to promise that he will inherit all that he possesses despite the trials and will leave a mark of him somewhere in the world. The status screen explains that the hidden condition is to be recognized by the master of all techniques, so Donghoon promises the old man that he will inherit it no matter what. The old man looks happy, and with that, Donghoon successfully clears the stage. Donghoon wakes up on the hospital bed and gets up to find Gitsoyul standing in the room. He has no recollection how he ended up here. but Soil introduces herself as the Vice Guildmaster of the Parang Guild, also known as the Dark Empress. Of course Dong-hoon already knows that but does not know what she is doing here. He does not remember what happened after clearing the dungeon, so he must have lost consciousness. Soil admits that she was surprised because she thought the boss was impossible to clear, but a porter did the job. Dong-hoon gets scared because she keeps staring at him like that, but he asks the $1,000 question. What is the Vice Guild Master of a major guild came to find him? Soil takes a seat as she says that she is curious how he cleared the absurd dungeon and its reward. She asks if he really became the old man's disciple. Dong-hoon understands that her questions are valid because the dungeon was hers, and he was just given a single opportunity. So from her perspective, he is just some random guy who came along and stole her achievement. A more violent ranker might have already beheaded him for stealing their prey. She asks about his pondering, but Dong-hoon asks what the news articles say about the dungeon exploration. So Yul tells him that they reported that the Param Guild's advance team successfully cleared the dungeon and had all survivors sign confidentiality agreements. Dong-hoon is glad that the public does not know he was the one who cleared the dungeon, so he thanks her. So Yul comments that he is more mature than he looks, while most hunters would want to show off their achievement to the world. Dong-hoon says that safety comes first for him. So Yul does not want him to thank her, as it is also a matter of pride for the Param Guild. Moreover, no one would believe that a porter was the MVP of the expedition instead of a ranker. Dong-hoon understands that they are keeping it a secret to save face, and if he reveals the truth, he might discreetly dealt with. Upon asking, Soyul tells him that he was out for 3 days since coming out of the dungeon. Dong-hoon decides to not babble about the rewards as it could put him in danger, so he tells her that he is still not sure what he got as a reward. He asks for some time to figure things out, and she does not need to worry about him escaping because no one can escape the eyes of the Dark Empress. Soyul stares at him before allowing him the time to sort things out and takes her leave. Dong-hoon flops back as he thinks about his spectacular of a life. Awakening after 3 years, meeting a ranker and the strange dungeon on top of that, plus he could end up on the wrong side of Parang if he is not careful. He receives a notice to check his clear rewards and finds that his energy has permanently increased by 20, and he has acquired an S-rank skill of teaching of all techniques. Dong-hoon now has 3 skill and 2 of them are S-rank, so he cries happy tears. He can read the memories of the dead but is not too impressed by it, because he does not know its use. He keeps scrolling to find the teaching skill's effects and immediately stands up to do outside. Dong-hoon uses the teaching skill to summon the old man who seems happy to be out. Both the old man and Dong-hoon are happy to see each other, but Dong-hoon receives a punch for calling for the old man so late. The old man says he is lazy and would not be able to keep up, but Dong-hoon explains that he called him as soon as he regained his senses. Besides that, Dong-hoon cannot figure out how the old man hit him when he is incapable of physically influencing this world. But the old man can read his mind by just looking at his expression, so he explains that since Dong-hoon is connected to him mentally, he has no trouble inflicting pain on him. The old man tells him to get started with the training immediately, but when Dong-hoon is about to summon skeletons, he tells him to stop because they need to decide what he is going to learn today. The old man understands the talents of those skeletons, but the problem is Dong-hoon. Dong-hoon wonders if the old man is trying to teach him as well, but the old man starts explaining that he got his nickname after learning and perfecting countless talents, so it is all up to Dong-hoon to learn. Dong-hoon tries telling that his talent is trash, but the old man shuts him up and scolds him because he claims to be able to make trash comparable to a genius. He says it is a good thing that he can exercise physical influence on him, making Dong-hoon tremble. The old man finds it fortunate because there are some arts he created but never had the chance to use. His methods may be painful, but since Dong-hoon seems quite tenacious, he should be okay. Dong-hoon does not understand why someone else is excitedly giving an estimate for this body, so he tells the old man that his heart is not ready yet. However, the old man shuts him up once again, claiming that many wanted to use his grand technique of the celestial artisan, but Dong-hoon thinks he should have used the skill much earlier if he can turn trash into a genius. The old man can tell what he is thinking, so he explains that he must use his life energy as payment to use this technique, and if he changed a boneless disciple into a genius, his body would have melted and disappeared. Dong-hoon asks about this case right now, but the old man says it should be alright since he is already dead. Dong-hoon thinks the old man could have chosen anyone who challenged him, but the old man hits him again, calling him talentless. He explains that this technique is something that turns trash into genius, so it is only useful if the target is at the level of food waste. Yup, Dong-hoon's called food waste, but the old man continues to say that the technique does not work in people who are not at that level because their bodies have already been influenced by other energies. Compared to them, Dong-hoon's body is very clean and weak. Not only that, but this is also the second best way since born geniuses are more impressive than fabricated ones. Even after being insulted in 2K, Dong-hoon still thinks the old man is talking facts. He likes the idea of getting stronger along with the skeletons, so when the old man asks if he is ready, Dong-hoon affirms energetically. However, he asks the old man to wait just after getting started, but the old man says it has not even started yet. Dong-hoon motivates himself by thinking about being a ranker, But this is just the beginning. The old man compliments his guts for once, and increases his pace, but Dong-hoon still endures and even obtains a C-rank pain resistance skill. After beating the crap out of him, the old man finally stops as that is all for the grand technique. Dong-hoon spent, but the old man tells him he is not a lost cause entirely. Dong-hoon asks if they are done for the day but gets informed that they still have 30 minutes left. The old man picks him up like a kitten and points at the skeletons waiting for him. Dong-hoon already wants to die. The old man teaches that the foundation of all professions is physical strength, so they start off with the posture. The skeletons follow the posture, but Dong-hoon looks like he can collapse any minute, because the old man beat the hell out of him, and now he is demanding a posture out of him. The old man once again calls him talentless, followed by the compliment that he has tenacity. Moreover, the master should not be weaker than their summoned beings. Dong-hoon knows all this, and that is why he is trying his best to endure this hellish training. His muscles are already torn and can't recover, so he does not understand the point of this training. Dong-hoon's completely spent, but fortunately the old man calls it a day. He tells Dong-hoon to do this physical training every morning, and he has no option but to comply. The old man vanishes when the teaching skill ends, so Dong-hoon flops on the ground. The skeletons gather around him, so he asks Bony One to carry him. As soon as Dong-hoon enters, the leader calls him because the survivors from the last expedition are here. Dong-hoon recognizes them, so they strike up the conversation. They mention that he looks better looking and muscular, making him jolly. Dong-hoon now notices that his shoulder and skeletal structure have changed as a result of a 30-minute massage. Putting that aside, Dong-hoon wonders why these hunters are here to see him, so he asks them. One of them introduces himself as Kang Jae-ho, a C-rank hunter. He is impressed by Dong-hoon's actions and attitudes back then, so he marked him down as someone to team up with. Dong-hoon clarifies that he is just an E-rank Necromancer mercenary, but they do not care about it, as there is a C-rank dungeon they want to hire him for. They know Dong-hoon is struggling financially, so he glares at the leader for sharing TMI. The leader seems to have sweet-talked the guy by selling him out to secure the job again, but it is true that he needs money. Jae-ho explains that the dungeon is tricky for a C-rank, but the rewards are pretty good, even including a power potion. Dong-hoon is shocked to hear about the power potion because it is a rare reward from dungeons, regardless of rank. It is a high-level potion known to cure any curse or illness. Jae-ho says that Dong-hoon will be a member this time, but Dong-hoon is more interested in the payment, so Jae-ho tells him it will be a fair share of profit. Dong-hoon is surprised and starts calculating in case a rare potion drops. An average price would be about 50 million won, and he will get approximately 8.33 million won. He loves the money, so when Jae-ho asks again, he readily agrees. He is also curious to see the power of his evolved skeletons in action, and this is a good chance for it. Jae-ho tells him to arrive at the location on Monday, ending their meeting. Dong-hoon explains to the old man that the hunters here grow stronger through the dungeons. The old man finds it laughable that the humans here try to run before they can walk. Dong-hoon explains that he needs money, and the old man understands, since he also prefers practical experience over studying at a desk. Dong-hoon feels elated at the permission, but the old man warns him he will not tolerate skipping training since he knows that he can be summoned even inside the dungeon. He decides to start the massage once again, much to Dong-hoon's horror. Dong-hoon feels sore all over when the old man calls it a day. He thinks he only survived thanks to his newly acquired skill to numb senses when the pain intensifies. He is glad that the skill has the potential to grow, but the old man compliments him for enduring well. Dong-hoon thanks the elder, but the old man thinks they can raise the intensity of their training a bit, starting tomorrow, making him shriek. The old man ignores him as he calls for everyone to gather around for the real training. He tells them to assume the same posture as last time and announces that he will teach each one of them a technique each day. The old man points at the sword skeleton, who confusedly looks at Dong-hoon. The old man says the skeleton has no skill, but they can develop it as they go. He orders the skeleton to swing, but it obviously looks terrified, so Dong-hoon has some motivation, but his own experience is so horrid that it makes the skeleton tremble. The skeleton starts swinging, but the old man calls Dong-hoon to ask what he thinks the swordsmanship is. Dong-hoon's answer is as simple as it is a technique that uses a sword. The old man expected as much, and tells him not to overthink it. He explains that swordsmanship is simply the skill of handling a sword, nothing more, nothing less. He asks Dong-hoon to pick up wooden sword, so he gets that the old man not only wants the skeletons to inherit all techniques, but also wants him to inherit them as well. The old man orders Dong-hoon to wield it without overthinking it, so he does as he is instructed. The old man praises him, but Dong-hoon can't stomach it well after all the trash talk. The old man, however, teaches like a real instructor, teaching each step keenly. He explains that Dong-hoon swung his sword in a way most comfortable for a slash, and he could see that he put his life into that swing. Dong-hoon can't believe it, but the old man asks if the slash can become powerful, if he adds speed and strength into it. Dong-hoon makes a blank face, so the old man explains that any slash becomes powerful with strength and speed. Dong-hoon finally understands that the old man wants him to create his very own slash, and then add strength and speed to it. The old man can see that his disciple is starting to understand, so he starts explaining more aspects of the swordsmanship that Dong-hoon and the skeleton will learn. Dong-hoon watches with awe as the old man performs a slash of his own, as he explains that there is no need for theoretical discussions, he just needs to strengthen his swing and slash. The old man claims that if Dong-hoon does that, everyone will eventually use his slash as the standard. This motivates Dong-hoon because he realizes that his posture does not matter because it is his swing. He starts practicing and acquires a C-rank Ren skill. The guild master of the Parang Guild is ranked 58th in the world, named Gia Parang, also known as the Fine Bow, is busy doing paperwork when his sister Gi Soyul comes for a visit. This prompts him to get up as this is the first time she has come to see him. Soyul takes a seat as she explains that she has been worried about something, and asks if a hunter around D rank suddenly exhibits strength beyond that of an A ranker. Guy Parang finds the question a bit odd, but answers that usually, even with getting a fortuitous opportunity or learning skill, it takes time to make it one's own. So it is very unlikely. If such a case existed, the only explanation would be that they had been hiding their ability. Soyul knows that the person she is talking about was not hiding it, because even rankers can't hide their abilities from her eyes due to her S-rank search skill. Gay Parang asks for the details, but Soyul hesitates since she has not made a report to her brother about that dungeon yet due to being defeated repeatedly. Soyul never felt so powerless like that before, so she can't comprehend how a D-rank hunter could achieve the feat. Certainly, his first impression was out of the ordinary, so she got curious about him and gave him a chance, but he actually cleared the dungeon. He also promised to tell her once he sorted things out, so she plans to wait for now. Guy Parang gets suspicious at her serious and smiling face, since she only ever cared about wielding a dagger. Soyul blushes but denies the claims, and gets up to take her leave. But her brother teases her from behind, Jae-ho and the other near the dungeon entrance, and welcome Dong-hoon. Jae-ho already texted the details so they could head inside right away. The dungeon is a C-rank, a desert field type. The main mission is to eliminate monsters and defeat the boss, very typical. Dong-hoon mentions applying sunscreen and packing emergency ice water as Jae-ho mentioned in the text. Dong-hoon notices that there are more people than he mentioned before. He does not know the two girls tagging along, so Jae-ho explains that he invited 2 F-rank porters but they have already paid them so he would not be charged additionally. Dong-hoon thinks it makes sense to have someone help pick up the ore and items dropped in the dungeon. He thinks a C-rank dungeon would not be too difficult since his skeletons can defeat an orc, the highest D-rank monster. They enter through the gate and find themselves in a desert where all their stats are decreased by 10% due to the harsh weather. The others are feeling too much drained, but Dong-hoon's not that affected since this is child's play compared to the hellish massages he receives from the old man. He summons his skeletons that parade like models, becoming the center of attention instantly. One of the hunters even compliments that the skeletons look stronger than the last time. Joho gathers attention to tell them that the type of monsters here are scorpions and snakes. The others feel frightened at the mention of snakes, but Joho consoles that they are mere C-rank monsters, and tells the porters to follow them closely. Thus the march starts, but the environment is too much for the hunters. Joho suddenly tells everyone to halt, but there's nothing in front, so they become nervous. But soon enough, scorpions start raining down on them. Joho starts slashing them down as he orders the others to get in battle formation. Everyone starts fighting while Dong-hoon watches from the side as he notes that the C-rank desert scorpions seem as strong as the orc he faced on the training grounds. Dong-hoon asks Boney 5 to use an air shield on him, and orders the others to wipe the scorpions. Dong-hoon ensures his safety so the tank skeleton uses the taunt skill as the others move forward to defeat the desert scorpions. Bonnie 1 uses his sword to attack that can't pierce their defense, but the attack's working so Dong-hoon orders it to keep going. The skeletons slash through the scorpion so it is going smoother than he thought. Dong-hoon watches the skeleton's skill and assumes that Dong-hoon had a fortuitous encounter, but Dong-hoon humbles himself saying that the others dealt with the largest group already. Dong-hoon laughs it off saying that having a fortuitous encounter improves one's personality. So Dong-hoon plays along, but he can't help but be wary of how much he says fortuitous encounter. On top of that, everyone is quite strong, so Dong-hoon does not think they needed to bring an E-rank hunter as a mercenary, but they know that it was him who received the reward from the high difficulty dungeon. However, due to the confidentiality contract with Parang, they can't openly talk or ask him about it, so they only have one way to answer their questions, and that's dungeon exploration. There is no CCTV, and no traces will be left behind as accidents frequently happen inside dungeons. For now, Dong-hoon just decides to be careful, since it is only a suspicion right now. Behind him, Jae-ho watches him and smirks. The party reaches the stage of the ancient Desert Scorpion King, but the system informs that they need a sacrifice to break the seal of the ancient Desert Scorpion King. They need to place 2 offerings atop the altar, and the offerings must be living F-rank or higher hunters. Dong-hoon never heard about this info, but the others also pretend to be oblivious, but their faces say it all. The F-rank porter asks the party leader Jae-ho to explain, but he just repeats that they need 2 sacrifices and orders the girls to go up. The girls question their sanity, but Jae-ho and the others do not care, because they intend to do it from the start. They reveal their plans, saying that if they want to receive high pay, they must pay a high price. Dong-hoon watches the scene, thinking that Jaho is confident he can easily overwhelm him if he is behaving like that in front of him. Jaho orders the girls to go up the altar, but Dong-hoon steps in front of them. Jaho asks if he is going against them and comments that he is purer than he looks. Dong-hoon tells him to shut up and asks for his goal to bring him here. He demands answers furiously, making Jaho believe that he did not clear the dungeon by sheer luck. Jato admits that they were curious about the fortuitous encounter. They do not know who they cooked and beat the ranker, so they went so far as to bring him to the dungeon. They say they have no intention of fighting him, but Dong-hoon does not believe them. They say they already showed him what kind of people they are, and even asked him to join, but if he wants to join them, he needs to share some of what he got from the fortuitous encounter. Dong-hoon calls them crazy because they are inviting him to become a villain like them, and even asking for the rewards for it. Yeah, Dong-hoon just wants to teach them a lesson. The villains offer Dong-hoon to join their side and hand over his rewards as well, but no protagonist would do that, so he summons Boney 3 to wipe them out. The other two get scared, but Jaho slashes through all the arrows as he tells Dong-hoon that he will regret his decision. Dong-hoon refuses to team up with a bunch of animals, as his skeletons start fighting. Jaho thinks he has gotten stronger just because he gained a chance and fights off. Dong-hoon notes that Jaho is stronger than he originally thought. He is a C-rank hunter, but his strength is close to B-rank. He continues fighting, but when things do not look good, Jaho reveals that he is not the only one they have to deal with. The reason they fearlessly wandered into an unknown rank dungeon is still hidden, but Dong-hoon notices bloodlust, so he warns Boney 1 in time, but even he can feel the impact. Someone emerges from behind Jaho as he explains that the hunter behind him is an A-rank assassin from the Shadow Lurkers. The A-rank hunter asks if this is the guy who cleared the dungeon gay. Soyul could not because Dong-hoon does not look particularly strong. Dong-hoon knows there's no way out because only he knows it is a miracle. He lasted this long against B-rank hunters. The girls apologize for causing trouble and thank him, thinking this is the end. Dong-hoon feels pity for them for ending up like this just because they are weak and decides to save them. Even if he is against an A-rank assassin, he has a powerful ally who is strong enough to trample A-ranks into the ground. Dong-hoon summons his teaching skill to summon the master of all skills, who seems unimpressed because he already knew this would happen. When a novice like Dong-hoon started wandering around, Dong-hoon insists that the situation is urgent, so he needs some advice, but the elder tells him to just accept his fate since he is no match for those guys. The old man finds it pitiful that he claims to be his disciple but can't even handle such weaklings. Dong-hoon tells him to stop lamenting because if he dies, the old man will not be able to fulfill his dream. However, the old man scolds him for getting in this situation in the first place, and even if he has mastered all the techniques, he can't make the impossible happen. The assassin speaks up to ask what he gained from the opportunity, making Dong-hoon realize that the villains only want to know the opportunity he was rewarded previously, so there is a solution to his situation. They are trying to intimidate him and pretend to be in control here, but they will be in trouble if Dong-hoon does not cooperate to share his secrets. Even the old man seems impressed by his method, so Dong-hoon starts his plan and asks if they want to know about his opportunity. The assassin affirms that he is curious because it is the reward from the dungeon that even Guy Soyul could not clear. Dong-hoon agrees to tell his secret, which pleases the assassin, but Dong-hoon wants to fight the ones who backstabbed him, claiming that the frustration and resentment would not let him speak otherwise. If they don't like the deal, they can just sue him. The assassin remains silent, but the girls feel frightened, so Dong-hoon explains that he has the mental illness of saving his pride no matter what the situation. The assassin can tell he is scheming something, but Dong-hoon waves it off, saying he can never deceive the eyes of an A-ranker. The assassin sees that there's a point, making Jaho nervous. Dong-hoon continues to say that he knows his fate since he is against a shadow lurker, but even if he dies, he won't let the backstabbers walk away unscathed. He even threatens to end his life right there if they do not believe him, but the villains stop him. The assassin decides to give him half an hour, but threatens him along with it. Dong-hoon agrees, but Jaho trembles with fury, thinking about the circumstances. Dong-hoon's already set, but the old man agrees to intervene as a form of practical guidance. The most difficult task is taking care of the assassin, so Dong-hoon needs to conserve as much energy as possible. The old man teaches him a strategy for using his opponent's strength against them. Dong-hoon thanks the elder and orders his skeletons to attack. The fight breaks out and the skeletons seem to have the upper hand. The mage skeleton summons fireballs, while the sword won Jaho's sword and pushes him away. The assassin notes that their moves are flawless and clean, so Dong-hoon might win the battle at this rate. However, the assassin seems shocked to find someone's presence at the dungeon entrance, and wonders if the person is on the lookout. On the other hand, Jaho tries crawling, but Dong-hoon overshadows him, making him terrified. The old man comments that the opponents are too weak to call this real combat experience, but it is a good start. Dong-hoon says he will get real combat experience with the assassin, but the old man scolds him for thinking he can win easily at his level. Dong-hoon orders Boney 1, but notices something coming. The elder tells him that another one like the assassin just joined the field and scolds him again for not thinking ahead. Dong-hoon knows he is right because he does not have any tricks up his sleeves and he is still a weakling in the hunter world. He now questions his decisions up till now, but Zhao laughs hysterically that they came with backup. Dong-hoon knows he should run when another assassin appears at the scene, but turns out the newcomer is only here to warn them that Zhao Soyul is here. Dong-hoon's dumbstruck at the info, but the assassins plan to run away after hearing her name, leaving Zhao Ho alone. Dong-hoon is still confused as he watches the power of a ranker. At the dungeon entrance, Zhao Soyul stands waiting, but she wonders if she is overreacting by following him this far, as if she is stalking him. She was able to track him to this dungeon with Parang's info, but now she thinks it is not right, because he promised he would tell her once he sorts things out. She decides to wait a bit more, and takes her leave. Inside the dungeon, Jaeho's minions are getting the beating of their life, but he refuses to die like this. He is determined to live and use everything he has to achieve that. Amidst the fight, Dong-hoon can see that Jaeho can't defeat him by force, so he is planning to do something to the porters behind him. Dong-hoon orders the Bony, who ambushes Jaeho and severs his arm. Jaeho shrieks in pain, but Dong-hoon knows Jaeho would not have spared him if he were weaker, so he approaches the man and looks down on him. Jaeho curses him and tries to jump at him, but Bony slashes off another limb, making him drop to the ground while shouting. Jaeho curses him some more and demands why he came before him, but Dong-hoon reminds him that he is the one who appeared before Dong-hoon. Jae wants to die already, but Dong-hoon says he will not be dying so easily. Jae grits his teeth and demands to die, but Bony takes his hand off Dong-hoon and drags him on the altar. Dong-hoon remembers being told that they need 2 living sacrifices to open the boss room. After the sacrifices have been placed, the system checks for their condition. Dong-hoon thinks he would have just backed out of this dungeon without clearing it, if this situation had not happened. But this is a different story since he gives what he gets. Repay kindness with kindness and avenge wrongs with vengeance. If someone sought to take his life, he would take theirs. Since the conditions have been met, the ancient seal lifts. Dong-hoon wishes the sacrifices to live good lives in their next life. He wonders why Soyul is not here yet. The shadow lurkers ran away, fearing her arrival, so if it were not for her, things could have gone wrong. He would have to fight 2 A-rank hunters and might have ended up on the altar instead. The door finally opens, but it leaves Dong-hoon shocked because of the pressure. The Scorpion King's rage erupts to the heavens after being suppressed for ages. Even the skeletons are suppressed by the presence of a strong being, causing all stats to reduce by 20%. Now this is something to worry about, but when the porter worries about him, he says it is still better than facing those shadow lurkers. The girl nervously agrees while Dong-hoon tries to calm down. The old man pops up behind him saying Dong-hoon does not need his help to handle such a lowly creature. The old man says if he can't even handle something like this, then it's better for him to just die. Dong-hoon asks him to not joke around with such a serious face, but the old man's not joking, and takes his leave for the day. Dong-hoon feels betrayed, but the system tells him the skill duration just ended. Dong-hoon halts as he looks at the Scorpion King, screeching at him. In the end, he has to face that thing by himself, so he steals himself. Dong-hoon steals himself and starts heading towards the gate with his skeletons, but when he does not find anything inside, he fears that the attack may come from underground, so he orders Bony 5 to cast Air Shield. Dong-hoon orders the others to spread out to make a formation. When everyone's set, the Scorpion King attacks from underground as expected. However, it ignored Dong-hoon and attacked Bony 3, making him wonder if it had intelligence. The creature starts approaching others, but Dong-hoon orders Bony 4 to use his skill to distract its attention. When the Scorpion King starts approaching Bony 4, it uses block skill to block the creature. Dong-hoon's glad to see that because now is his time, so he tells everyone to attack at once. Dong-hoon is not interested in finding a weak point because no one is strong against a gang-up. However, the Scorpion King pushes the skeletons away. Although it is quite difficult, Dong-hoon is definitely inflicting damage on it, so he orders the skeletons to keep attacking without worrying about death. Dong-hoon currently has 50 energy left, and as long as he has the energy left to summon skeletons, his skeletons are basically invincible. Thus, once a skeleton dies, Dong-hoon summons it again to fight against the creature. In this way, the skeletons defeat the ancient desert Scorpion King. Dong-hoon feels relieved because he only has 10 energy left, and it would not have ended well if the creature resisted a bit more. The skill and stats of the skeletons increase after fighting a C-rank boss, while Dong-hoon receives the ancient desert Scorpion King's venom gland. He wonders if it is just an ingredient, but the system provides that there are about 20 types of toxic poisons inside it. It can be used as an ingredient to make equipment, or as a skill ingredient. Bony 3 suddenly starts reacting to the venom gland, which fulfills a hidden condition of poison arrow making. Dong-hoon had no idea a skill could be unlocked in such a way, but he finally understands the reason the Dark Lord keeps chanting dungeon. Bony 3 acquires the skill of poison arrow, and with that the dungeon's cleared, so they are able to get out. The porters cheer on their survival and thank Dong-hoon, who tells them to be careful in the future. After the girls leave, Dong-hoon proceeds to check the clear reward to find that he has obtained a B-rank item, Trace of the Ancient Desert. Dong-hoon obtains that Trace of Ancient Desert, which is actually a key, The system provides that it is a key to uncovering the secret of a hidden relic. Dong-hoon does not know what it does and wants someone to explain it to him when Soyul appears behind him. She thinks she has given him enough time to sort things out, as he is already going on an expedition. Besides, if she did not come, Dong-hoon probably would never have sought her out. Dong-hoon feels nervous hearing that, but his skeleton just shakes its skull. Dong-hoon wonders if he should mix in some lies, but if she catches him lying, he would be doomed. So Dong-hoon decides to tell her the truth as it is more beneficial. Plus, he is a novice hunter who knows nothing about this world, so he can use this opportunity to build a connection to a ranker. Dong-hoon finally starts talking, saying he is going to tell her everything, but there is a condition. First, she needs to protect him until he grows stronger. However, Soyul does not understand and asks if he owes someone a debt, but Dong-hoon tells her he just has some bullies after him. Soyul asks about the second thing, so Dong-hoon tells her he is a rookie, so she needs to teach him what he does not know within reason. Soyul is shocked to see the key, making Dong-hoon surprised that the key is worth enough to incite such a reaction from a ranker. When Soyul finds that he got it from the dungeon, she calls him extremely lucky. She explains that the chances of finding a medium in a regular dungeon are almost zero, as there are less than 100 known in the world, plus it is bound to a person so it can't be traded. Dong-hoon still does not understand what it does, so Soyul explains that a medium is also kind of a fortuitous opportunity. As you delve into them, linked quests appear, and those linked quests increase in rank, eventually reaching S rank and above. Dong-hoon's shocked to hear that, but Soyul continues to say that even rankers including her are desperately searching for these items. She ponders a bit and accepts his condition, but she also has a condition. Soyul follows Dong-hoon home but is surprised to see that he is living in a shabby place like this. She evaluates that there are no surveillance devices or skills active here, and no hunters above D rank around the building, so Dong-hoon should be safe now. After confirming the residence, she tells him she will be staying on the rooftop for the time being, so he can let her know when he is going training tomorrow. Dong-hoon remembers the conversation from earlier. She wants to monitor his training because she has been observing his energy since he cleared the old man's dungeon. He has been growing stronger exponentially, which got her curious about his rapid growth. He has already explained everything about the fortuitous opportunity, from the old man to what kind of training he is receiving from him. The only problem left is the shadow lurkers. If they continue to threaten him, he is determined to give back as much as he gets from them. But for now, our protagonist is getting a hellish massage from the old man who tells him that his body is starting to take shape. This means that they need to increase the intensity. Dong-hoon protests that this is just violence. He is furious that a trash is describing his grand technique of the celestial artisan with a word as vulgar as violence. The old man increases the intensity of the massage so high that Dong-hoon's pain resistance upgrades. After the hellish treatment ends, Soyul approaches him, saying she can't get used to the fact that he has been undergoing this kind of training every day since then. Dong-hoon explained everything related to the old man to Soyul, since she couldn't see him and couldn't follow just by watching. The old man prompts Dong-hoon to stand up as they still have 30 minutes left. Dong-hoon knows he should not be lying down when his level is so low. Today is Boney 3's turn. The skeletons are growing stronger, but Dong-hoon has to learn and train with them as well. He opens the status window, and is quite satisfied by the skill set. All skeletons have their unique kill and he learned each one of their skills, except for the mage one. To learn this skill, Dong-hoon needs to learn the use of ki first. The old man draws a circle, and asks Dong-hoon to sit cross-legged in it. After that, the old man tells him to recite the formula of the Great Blue Heart technique he taught him last time. It does not end with just reciting. Dong-hoon also has to feel how the formless energy moves. Dong-hoon starts doing as told, while the old man explains that breathing is the most crucial step in this technique. If he can't feel ki while the old man trains his skeletons, he will judge Dong-hoon as talentless and intensify the training. Dong-hoon concludes that the old man is planning to beat him to death if he can't keep up, so he focuses on the technique. At night, Soyul stands on the rooftop thinking if Dong-hoon really became the disciple of that bizarre old man. She still remembers the countless times she was thrown by the old man, and the feeling still sends shivers down her spine. She thought it was all because of the fortuitous opportunity, but she has to acknowledge his determination to endure pain. She has no choice but to observe him for now, because the old man she could not defeat is right beside him, making her wonder how far he will grow, but she is sure it will be exciting. At Shadow Lurker headquarters, the CEO asks again if they need support because of Ga Foyul. When the assassin affirms, the CEO says they are not that keen on interacting with the pairing guild either. The CEO is ranked 92 in the world, alias Hellhound, name Nick Jacan. The assassin before him apologizes for his incompetency, but Hellhound asks if this is an opportunity to let him hold the rankers in the palm of his hand. The assassin is sure that it is because of how much Gi Soyul is taking interest in it. Hellhound is tempted, so he flicks his finger, and a woman appears before him. He asks about the Shadow Lurker's schedule, so the woman tells him they are fully booked for the next month. Jacan ponders a bit and asks about Dong-hoon's rank, so the assassin tells him he is E-ranked. Jacan thinks he still has a long way to go, but still plans to go see Dong-hoon himself in a month. On the other hand, Dong-hoon continues his intense training with Soyul as a bystander. When he is done, she approaches him and reminds her promise to protect him from an ambush until he grows stronger. Dong-hoon remembers that, but he never thought she would be watching him 24/7. Soyul argues that she would not be able to protect him if she is not watching him all the time. But Dong-hoon knows she is a ranker, so she has dungeons to clear and guild matters to attend to. Soyul tells him she has been watching him over 2 weeks now, and even though she has been neglecting her guild activities, there are still things she needs to do. So she gives him 2 options to choose from. First is that Dong-hoon follow her around for 6 hours, while the second is that he uses the key he got back then. Dong-hoon summons the key in his hand, while Soyul explains that mediums are bound items, meaning it will be a solo dungeon. It might be safer to be inside the dungeon than being with her, since it will be a place where even rankers can't interfere. Dong-hoon thinks it will be dangerous inside the B-rank dungeon, but Soyul smiles as she says he does not realize how much he has grown. It could be a good opportunity to check his strength, and Soyul thinks he would not have any trouble clearing it. Dong-hoon blushes at being praised by a ranker, because no one acknowledged him as an E-rank necromancer. He can't believe he is receiving someone's recognition. He thinks it is a good idea, so he chooses the second option. Soyul already knew he would, so Dong-hoon decides to leave right away, since he already finished his training. She tells him to infuse his energy into the key to activate it. Dong-hoon does as he is told, which causes the key to glow. After greeting Soyul, Dong-hoon is engulfed by the golden light, and finds himself transported to the ancient desert where he discovers the pyramid. Dong-hoon summons his skeletons and proceeds to move forward. He tells the skeletons to maintain formation as they follow him. Dong-hoon knows they are bound to be weak, as D-rank entering a B-rank dungeons, so they must fight like the weak. The door opens, but as soon as Dong-hoon steps inside, the system discovers a connection between the dungeon and Dong-hoon's profession. The dungeon starts transforming, but Dong-hoon can't exit the dungeon now. The entrance closes off with such intensity that it shakes the ground, making Dong-hoon fall. He entered with such confidence just to be struck in a situation like this. However, it is still fortunate that his skeletons are with him, so he decides to scout the surroundings first. Boney 3 uses Secure Vision skill to lighten the way. Dong-hoon can see that there is an open space at the end, making him wonder if this is the right path. But he has no choice but to go forward for now. He enters a bright place as the system notifies that he has discovered the resentment of the Sunlance stage. Deep within the pyramid lies the warrior and absolute ruler of the ancient desert empire, the Sunlance. The mission is to break through the obstacles to reach the Sunlance. The archer skeleton starts firing arrows at the lines of skeletons before them because they will have to defeat them all to aim for the next target. However, the attack comes at Dong-hoon, who stops it in time. His skeletons start fighting head-on, including the mage skeleton that uses fireball to destroy the enemy. However, more skeletons start marching toward them, but Dong-hoon does not seem worried at all. His tank skeleton breaks after the impact, but Dong-hoon simply summons him again, shocking the enemy skeletons. Dong-hoon can just pick up a new spear, if this one breaks, to keep fighting the enemy. He uses Pierce skill to fight while his skeletons use their special skill during the combat. After this fight ends, the Sunlance sleeping in the pyramid awakens. The system notifies that the Sunlance is watching them and is even sneering at it as he asks if they can face him using this skill. Dong-hoon does not know who this person is, but he has cleared a dungeon far worse than this. He is the one who convinced the old man who even a ranker could not defeat. He decides to move forward with his skeletons, but triggers a warning as 100 D-rank skeleton spearmen approach them. Dong-hoon wonders if this dungeon has a gimmick PF spawning infinite skeletons, until he reaches the destination, because at this rate there will be no end to this. He asks Boney 4 to hand over the shield because he is going to tank from now on. Dong-hoon asks Boney 5 to cast air shield on him, while the others watch his back. He plans to ignore the mobs and run straight to the boss room. He can either reach the destination or fall before he does, so let's roll the dice. Following the plan, our protagonist starts dashing towards the mob skeletons as he guides his own summons. The plan's working so far, so the system tells him to reach the Sunlance. Dong-hoon gives his all to reach the bright door, but he falls down, causing Sunlance to mock Dong-hoon. Dong-hoon wants to argue that he is just an E-rank hunter, but more mob skeletons arrive, making him wonder if this is the end. His skeletons fight, but Dong-hoon knows that fighting now means death, so he needs to focus only on running. After fighting for an eternity, Dong-hoon notices the mountain of bone of skeletons he just fought. This suggests that the dungeon is a circular structure, so whether he goes forward or backward, he will just end up meeting them again. He ponders on what to do next, while only having 20 stamina and 30 skeletons in front of him. He has no choice but to block them away with his skeletons and somehow breaking through in the meantime. Dong-hoon hikes up the mountain of bones, but he has no idea where this spear lance could be. He notices a black hole on the ceiling, so he calls the Boney and tells it to throw him up there with all its might. The Sunlance taunts him again for finally figuring it out, and threatens to turn him to ashes, but Dong-hoon is determined to see who wins in the end. Dong-hoon jumps up to finally reach the Sunlance, making the mob skeletons disappear. Dong-hoon has one arm into the void, but it triggers a warning that the Sunlance is appearing. However, Dong-hoon gasps as he suddenly starts using his memory recollection skill and is about to teleport shortly. In ancient times, the Sunlance takes his spear and brutally uses it against the forces. He says they were the ones who started bullying him first and ostracized him, so they can't blame him for being harsh. He stands before the people who bow down to him and ask him to save them, but he smiles as he refuses, saying the desert only needs death to survive. Sunlance orders his forces to raise their spears to burn everything to ashes like the parched sun. He laughs hysterically when his orders are fulfilled. With this, the memory reproduction skill ends and Dong-hoon is able to see the Sunlance in front of him, in all his glory. Dong-hoon wonders if this really is just a B-rank dungeon because it definitely feels like that Old Man Dungeon's retake. The Sunlance insults Dong-hoon for being a human, and launches at him. Dong-hoon closes his eyes at the attack, but fortunately, the old man moves him out of the place. The old man scolds him, but Dong-hoon's more surprised to find him here because he is at 0 energy right now, so he does not have the strength to summon a skeleton or the elder. Before his questions can be answered, the Sunlance starts talking, furious that a mere human can dodge his attack. The Sunlance launches to attack again, but the old man uses his absolute shield to block it. Dong-hoon still falls due to the impact, but the old man asks if he can't even distinguish between illusion and reality. Dong-hoon finally realizes that this place only exists in his mind, so the old man explains that while he is unconscious, the Sunlance guy has intruded into his mind. This guy is not someone Dong-hoon can face yet, so the old man tells him to step aside for now. The old man unusually seems fascinated by the monster who riled the world, and evaluates that his spear skills are several times stronger than the old man's. Dong-hoon gasps at that, but the old man clarifies that he is only talking about the spear skills. Overall, he is beneath the old man. Now the old man thinks taking Dong-hoon as his disciple was not entirely vain, since he is able to find entertainment even after death thanks to him. The old man faces the Sunlance, who is furious that a human is once again daring to cross his path. He says that the humans gouged out his eyes for no reason and mercilessly took away his freedom, so he is bent on making them feel the same pain he endured. While both are fighting, Dong-hoon feels that this is familiar somehow, and remembers that when he first entered the pyramid, the system discovered some connection between this dungeon and Dong-hoon's profession. Dong-hoon counts the similarities that include the dead, the spear, and the skeletons, but the thing that is most familiar is the movement. The Sunlance's resentment towards humanity pierces the heaven, so the difficulty becomes unmeasurable. Dong-hoon starts moving forward, but the old man tells him to stop because the guy is not his match. However, Dong-hoon says he has to do it. The Sunlance stares at Dong-hoon, who is slowly approaching, but the old man blocks his way as he asks if he has a plan. Dong-hoon tells him that being is his summoned skeleton, his child, so he must be the one to overcome this. The old man is shocked to hear that, but Dong-hoon knows that this stage was for him from the start. He needs to handle this until all this resentment is consumed and exhausted. Dong-hoon approaches the Sunlance, but he gets furious at the fact that a mere human think he can understand him. He despises humans to his core, so he raises his spear and attacks Dong-hoon, who tries to block but fails as expected. The one-sided fight goes on like this until Dong-hoon can't stand anymore. He is using pain-resistant skill, but it's still painful. However, he still gets up as he summons the spear and faces the Sunlance once again, telling him to pour out his grudge. The Sunlance questions him because it is impossible to do it even if he fully understands him. He attacks again, but this time Dong-hoon manages to block it by a hair's width. The Sunlance says he never had anyone by his side because he was half human, half beast. He knows a human could never like someone like him. The Sunlance again attacks with the rage of resentment as he recounts all the things the humans did to him. By the end of the attack, Dong-hoon soaked in his own blood, but he sympathizes with the Sunlance. The Sunlance also remembers people pitying him, but in the end, they were no different. To him, the humans were nothing but lies and betrayal. They treated him like a monster, so becoming one was the only option left for him. Dong-hoon receives all the blows, but he realizes that the resentment is weakening little by little. Dong-hoon asks how long he plans to stay stuck in sorrow like this, because if he keeps it up, he will be the one to lose in the end. Dong-hoon stands once again as he tells Sunlance him to think about the reason for his pain. Sunlance does not believe anyone can know the reason of his suffering. He was abandoned and his emotions withered away. They have festered for hundreds of years, leaving scars that will never heal, so nothing can be restored. Now, Dong-hoon admits that the past can't be undone, so he asks him to be reborn for himself alone. Sunlance can't comprehend it, so Dong-hoon explains that he has continued to suffer as a tormented soul, even after death, while the ones who tormented him are all dead. The Sunlance starts recollecting that this place is the tomb where he buried himself after slaughtering all humans, and yet Dong-hoon is telling him to live a new life. The Sunlance asks if he is really telling him to live a new life. Dong-hoon confirms as he says that he is not here to argue about right and wrong. He can't say the humans who oppressed him were right, nor that he was right to massacre countless humans. It's just about what he could not do, and what he wants to do. He is telling him to enjoy his life. The Sunlance does not know what he wanted to do, so Dong-hoon tells him he could clearly see his past and emotions. He undoubtedly wanted to see the world. He was curious about the soft sand beneath his feet, and the camels roaming the desert intrigued him. The Sunlance finally remembers that he was curious about the world. Dong-hoon says it is enough. Dong-hoon admits he can't fully empathize with his pain, but even if he felt it for a moment, that's all it was. That is why Dong-hoon does not want to comfort his emotion recklessly, and he should not. He is only telling him that it is okay to stay true to his desires, and set aside the hatred for the sake of seeing the world. The Sunlance asks if he will show him the world, so Dong-hoon confirms. He tells him he is a cursed necromancer, a sorcerer who deals with death. The world he lives in is completely different from the one the Sunlance lived in, but if he still wants to see such a world, all he needs to do is take Dong-hoon's hand and come under him. The system provides that the Sunlance feels conflicted while he asks if Dong-hoon is different from other humans. He tells him that he is the absolute ruler of the ancient desert empire, a half-human, half-beast, so he does not just serve anyone, especially if that someone is human. The Sunlance asks if he truly is worthy of being his master. This question activates a hidden quest to prove that he is the true master. Dong-hoon has no other choice at this point, so he directly asks how he is supposed to prove that. The Sunlance demands to take his spear and endure the true power of the sun. Dong-hoon agrees to do that, so the Sunlance launches at him. Just as the spear is about to reach Dong-hoon, a bright light flashes and Dong-hoon finds himself outside the dungeon. The old man praises him for properly embracing the child's resentment. The system notifies that the pain endurance skill has upgraded to grade A. Dong-hoon says that his abilities did not matter to the child, so he will accept the resentment as many times as needed. He recalls that the Sunlance stops the attack as he says he is different. He wants to be born again, so he accepts Dong-hoon as his lord. This fulfills the hidden condition, so the stage clears. At a fancy party, Jae-soyeol is bored to death. She only came here because her brother asked her to, but this is nothing but a waste of time. Before, she could tolerate it since it was a chance to talk to a ranker. However, compared to the old man, everyone here is just a newborn child. She just wants to leave quickly, but is interrupted by some guy who's acting overly friendly. The guy keeps blabbering nonsense, but Soyeol does not answer. Instead, she looks at the clock to say she has a prior appointment, so she can't stay longer. The guy tries to make her stop, but she ignores him and takes her leave. The man grits his teeth at her, retreating back, thinking that being a ranker does not make her special. He assumes that the rumors of her having a boyfriend are true and decides to look into it. Dong-hoon gets out to the dungeon and heavily flops on the ground, saying he was going to die for real. The sun has not set yet, and Soyeol said she will be out for about 6 hours. The system notifies him about the skeletons being adjusted so that the stats have all balanced out. All have been upgraded, including the spear skeleton that has become something special. He now inherits the memories and will of the Sunlance, so his name has been changed as well. The skill set also includes the dazzling radiant solar combo, raging desert and soul flame. These are all incredible, but Dong-hoon has issue with the name Solar Lance, since it sounds too cold, so he decides to just call his solar. Moving forward, he checks the clear reward to find that he has obtained an S-rank item called Golden Random Box. As an E-rank hunter, Dong-hoon has never gotten a decent item before, but now he has an S-rank item in his hands. He opens the golden box to get S-rank spear called Flame Dragon Staff. Dong-hoon is happy with the item and checks its market worth. After opening the application, he types in the specs, but no one believes him, making him wonder if he has to shove the truth in their faces. He uploads the video along with the question and gets insane attention that gets him on the best board, and even on the news. He feels shocked at the attention but is glad that the hunter board has good security, so his personal info would not leak. Dong-hoon receives tons of messages, so he deletes the post instantly, not wanting to attract any more attention yet. He realizes that there is no rule stating he has to use it, so he decides to check it right away. Dong-hoon summons the mage skeleton and hands over the staff as a present. This makes the skeleton so shocked that his jaw drops, quite literally. Dong-hoon gifts the S-tier staff to the mage skeleton, who snatches it immediately and starts testing it out like a kid who just got his favorite toy. Dong-hoon is left surprised to see that the bone guy can actually equip the staff of the fire dragon. Since normally a necromancer's undead can't even use items, it unexpectedly works, but Dong-hoon is troubled. This is his very first S-rank item after all. He finds himself torn between giving it to the mage skeleton or selling it for a hefty price. The mage skeleton seems to notice his hesitation and suddenly takes a headstrong stance, like it's daring him to take it back. Dong-hoon tries to tell it to hand over the expensive item, but the stubborn undead refuses outright. With a loud sigh, Dong-hoon gives in, and his summon starts celebrating like it just won a boss battle. Deep down, Dong-hoon thinks it's the right call to let him have the staff. After all, this skeleton might also achieve a true awakening someday, just like Sun Yang. Once he checks the achievement rewards, Dong-hoon proceeds to the dungeon clear rewards. He receives an A-rank item called Root of Racial Conflict, an item tied to a specific profession. This root holds the power to uncover the secrets of hidden ruins and can even unlock a dungeon, but it can only be activated by hunters ranked C or above. The item is a catalyst, and that instantly reminds Dong-hoon of what Soyeol told him once. Catalysts are like fateful opportunities that trigger chain quests. These chain quests level up over time, and can even reach S rank or higher. There's weight in her words too, since every catalyst she's ever encountered has been like that. Dong-hoon wonders if the route also unlocks a dungeon related to other skeletons like Sun Yang. Could it be that all 10 skeletons he summoned are absolute beings from their respective worlds? That would make his profession absurdly overpowered. He also can't help but feel like this mysterious system is favoring him a bit too much. Still, he decides not to overthink it. His main goal is to become a ranker, and if the system wants to bless him, he's definitely going to milk that luck for all it's worth. Skeletons, also known as skullheads, are undead beings that have nothing left but bones in their entire body. The same kind of undead is speaking to Dong-hoon right now. On top of that, it even claims to see the future. As bizarre as it sounds, Dong-hoon convinces himself that it's not that strange, because honestly, it already makes zero sense that a pile of bones without nerves or muscles is walking around and fighting like a pro. Just then Soil makes her entrance. She seems absolutely fascinated by the talking skeleton, saying it's such a rare sight that even seasoned necromancers would be left speechless. Dong-hoon gets a little defensive, feeling slightly offended that she's calling his one and only precious Sun Yang a mere skeleton. He also questions whether it's fine for her to be hanging around here like this, given that she's the Dark Lord of Rankers herself. Soil brushes off his concern, and assures him not to worry, promising to protect him until he becomes stronger. However, that promise only extends up to A rank. Once he reaches that level, he should be able to handle himself, and joining one of the major guilds will be no problem at all. She even points out that with his current growth rate it won't take long. Dong-hoon feels a bit awkward hearing that, since he's still technically a D-rank cursed necromancer, but Soil isn't buying it. She says she can't believe that rank because he's been stuck at the same level ever since she's known him. She can tell just by looking at Sun Yang that it's already close to B-rank level, and Dong-hoon himself seems to be improving every single day. Dong-hoon silently agrees that it's a pretty insane growth rate. If this absolute being who once ruled over an entire world regains its original strength, it could become something even greater than before. Dong-hoon checks with Sun Yang to confirm if he needs guidance in his training. Sun Yang assures him that although this frail body still feels unfamiliar and weak, he'll work hard to quickly regain his original power to assist him. Dong-hoon nods and tells him to go train on his own, and the obedient skeleton heads off to do just that. Watching the training, Dong-hoon starts wondering about his own rank. Since he's obtained an item that only unlocks at C rank, there must be a way for him to reach it too. With that thought in mind, he sets his next goal to hit C rank no matter what. Back at his apartment, Dong-hoon has set up a cardboard divider in the room. Soil says he doesn't need to go that far, but Dong-hoon explains that it just feels wrong to have her sleep on the rooftop every night, especially since she's helping him. He even clarifies rather awkwardly that he'd never cross any lines. Soil tells him he can just roll out his sleeping bag and crash like he did yesterday, no big deal. Dong-hoon feels a twinge of guilt at the mention of the sleeping bag. He's just the kind of guy who can't give up his bed no matter who the guest is. Soil insists that he doesn't need to trouble himself, but Dong-hoon stubbornly refuses, saying that boundaries need to be clear. He knows he's still considered weak in the Hunter Society, and if word got out that he made Soil, the Dark Lord herself, sleep outside, and her brother found out, well, that would be game over for his peaceful life. However, Soil corrects him, clarifying that she wasn't talking about sleeping arrangements at all. She meant he doesn't need to bother with the cardboard partition in the first place. His mind short-circuits for a second, but Soil calmly explains that if a high ranker like her really wanted to, the partition wouldn't make a difference. His head would be rolling on the floor in an instant. A cold chill runs down Dong-hoon's spine at her words, while Soil continues nonchalantly, saying the cardboard separation is completely meaningless anyway. Dong-hoon can't believe that this woman spends so much of her time thinking about slaying people. It's both terrifying and oddly on-brand for her. Suddenly, a loud banging on the door cuts through the awkward atmosphere, making both of them freeze in surprise. A voice calls out from outside, but Dong-hoon can't remember inviting anyone over at this hour. He steps toward the door, figuring that if it were someone dangerous, Soil would have already noticed. When he opens it, he's greeted by the sight of a crying girl standing in the hallway. He doesn't recognize her, nor does he recall her being a resident of this building. Between sobs, the girl asks if he's Dong-hoon, and desperately pleads for him to save her brother. Dong-hoon, shocked and confused, listens as she pulls out a threat letter that was apparently left at their house. Taking the letter in his hands, Dong-hoon scans it and discovers that the leader of his guild has been abducted. The kidnappers demand that Dong-hoon come to a specific location alone if he wants to retrieve him. Dong-hoon's mind races, and he quickly connects the dots. It has to be the work of the Dark Shadow Group. They're the only ones bold enough to pull off something like this. Soyul leans over his shoulder for a peek at the letter and scoffs, saying she didn't expect the group to move this blatantly. The girl, wide-eyed, is stunned to see Soyul in person, but the Slay Queen herself pays her no mind. She coolly explains that since she's been staying close to Dong-hoon, the Dark Shadow Group must have resorted to low-level tactics like kidnapping. Then her expression hardens as she mentions a message from her brother Parang. His squad was ambushed inside a dungeon by Hellhound himself, and he's asking for her help if she's available. Dong-hoon tenses up immediately. Hellhound is the master of the Dark Shadow group, which means this entire setup was a coordinated distraction to divide their forces. Seeing Soil gritting her teeth, Dong-hoon can tell she's torn. She's clearly worried about the attack on the Parang Guild, but she's still staying by his side because of her promise to protect him. Dong-hoon tells her to go help her brother first, but Soil refuses. She insists that Parang is the 58th ranked hunter strong enough to survive without her, and besides, Dong-hoon is alone. Who knows what might happen the moment she leaves his side. Dong-hoon admits she's got a point, but he insists that they should prioritize saving the kidnapped person first. The letter demanded he come alone after all. Soil warns him it's obviously a trap, but Dong-hoon argues that Hellhound's already occupied with Parang's squad, and besides, he's got Old Man Mansell and Sunyang to back him up. He even reminds her of her own words that life is a journey that begins with connections and ends with connections. Someone connected to him is suffering because of him, and he can't just sit around doing nothing. He doesn't want to be a cowardly hunter anymore. He wants to give back what he's received. So Yul sighs at his determined speech, then gives in. She agrees to head to Parang first, sort things out quickly, and then join him afterward. Before leaving, she reminds him that she once promised to introduce him to many powerful connections, and it seems that might be happening sooner than expected. With that cryptic remark, she disappears without another word, leaving Dong-hoon more confused than ever. Later that night, under an eerie moon by the riverbank, a group of men throw the kidnapped guild leader onto the ground. One of them checks the time and grins, saying Dong-hoon should be showing up any moment now. And right on cue, Dong-hoon appears alongside his skeleton companion, materializing like ghosts in the dark. The Dark Shadow goons throw the beaten leader down again, just for fun, making him groan in pain. Their apparent leader smirks, commenting that Dong-hoon's got guts to show up alone as instructed. He lets out a mocking laugh, saying that by the looks of his skeleton, Dong-hoon must be some low-ranking necromancer trying to act brave. On the other hand, Dong-hoon quietly sizes up his enemies, realizing they're all A-rank hunters, and he's certain there are even B-rank fighters hiding around the perimeter. The Dark Shadow leader finally pulls out a dagger, his grin widening as he says that Dong-hoon should already know exactly why he's been summoned here. Here's a tense standoff between our protagonist and the Dark Shadow group, with the poor abducted person lying helplessly in the middle. The Dark Shadow man assumes Dong-hoon already knows why he's been called here, but Dong-hoon calmly claims that he's only come because the note told him to, if he wants to save the captive. The bad guy, convinced that Dong-hoon is just playing dumb, decides to do what villains do best, start threatening the hostage to force the truth out of him about the so-called opportunity Dong-hoon has stumbled upon. He warns that if Dong-hoon doesn't spill the details, the hostage is done for. Dong-hoon's hands tremble slightly. After all, he only has 5 D-rank bones to rely on. But even then he braces himself, unwilling to give away what he considers his one true shot at something big. At last, he decides to reveal just enough to survive. The bad guys release the guild leader, and the Dark Shadow man smirks, saying that's exactly how Dong-hoon should behave if he wants to keep breathing. Dong-hoon, playing along, expresses his gratitude for being allowed to live. He then reveals that his opportunity is actually his master, someone who trains him. That makes the Dark Shadow leader pause. He remembers hearing about an old man, one even Soil had trouble facing. Dong-hoon explains that his master is a powerhouse so terrifying that even the Dark Emperor Soil challenged him dozens of times, only to get wrecked every single time. The villains buy it barely, but the disbelief is written all over their faces. Then one of them asks whether this master is visible only to Dong-hoon, because if that's the case, it's totally useless to them. Dong-hoon coolly explains that there's a special method to make his master visible, and that he can even share him with all of them. The Dark Shadow members light up at the idea of being trained by such a being, and Dong-hoon hypes them up even more by claiming that Soil herself stays by his side for this very reason. They ask how the transfer works, and Dong-hoon replies that he can start immediately, though it'll take around 30 minutes to chant the spell and set everything up. The truth is, while he was heading here, Dong-hoon got a message from Soil. She warned him not to act recklessly, and promised that her connections would come if she called for them. All he had to do was stall for 30 minutes. Now with a calm expression, Dong-hoon asks which assassin would like to receive the transmission first. The Dark Shadow members hesitate, unsure whether this is real or a trap. Dong-hoon, on the other hand, looks fired up. The die has been cast. A ball of greed now hangs in the air, impossible to tell if it holds truth or lies. Whether they'll catch it or not, that's their call. Minutes drag by, and the Dark Shadow men grow impatient. The so-called opportunity guy has been chanting for over 30 minutes now, and the leader's suspicion keeps growing. It feels just like last time. Different situation, same delay tactic. He demands to know when the spell will end, but Dong-hoon just tells him to chill out, warning that if they keep interrupting, he might lose focus and have to start over. With a sly grin, he teases them, asking if they're getting nervous, and even suggesting they can back out if they're too scared. That does it. The Dark Shadow leader snaps and vents his anger on the poor abducted man. Dong-hoon shoots up, demanding to know what they're doing, but the leader scoffs, claiming that since 30 minutes have passed and Dong-hoon broke his promise first, he's free to slay the hostage. Dong-hoon's worry spikes as the blade inches closer to the guild leader's neck, until out of nowhere, a spear slams into the ground near the Dark Shadow group, making them scatter in shock. They whip their heads around to see who attacked, and it's Sun Yang. They can't believe that a mere skeleton pulled off something like that. But Dong-hoon, unfazed, mocks them for their impressive dodging skills and laughs at how they wasted 30 minutes for nothing. Furious, the leader unleashes his power, roaring that a single skeleton with a few tricks won't turn the tide. He orders his assassins to eliminate the hostage and capture Dong-hoon for daring to deceive them. As the assassins close in, Sun Yang steps forward with calm confidence and grace, ready to protect his master. Dong-hoon summons the rest of his undead squad and commands them to wipe out every last one of the enemies before him.